Check. Thank you. We have a few people to seat, and we'll get started in a minute here. Thank you. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I can't tell you how much it means to Joe and Jill and me that you are all here. And we're going to together honor Bill's life and times in this world and the World Herald. I want to welcome some specific groups here, Bill's nephews and nieces and their families who made the trip this morning from South Dakota. We welcome you. It's wonderful to see you. Welcome to my sisters and their families who traveled to be with us from Albion, Nebraska, and even as far as San Antonio, Texas. My great nieces, I love it. I want to welcome Bill's former colleagues and friends from his working days, one of whom came from Albuquerque to be here, and to the friends that he made since then, who have become like family to us. And welcome to those who may not have known Bill, but who are here to show they're caring for the three of us. It means a lot. This afternoon, we want to share Bill's story with you via pictures, videos, and narratives, special guests, and music. Jill and I will be the narrators. Joe preferred an offstage role, but you can catch him downstairs afterwards when we have refreshments and coffee in the common room. Later in the service, there will be a time for any of you to say a few words. A hand mic would be brought to you. The songs you'll hear today are all ones that Bill loved and sang at home, around the house, in the shower, in public. He loved to sing. He loved parties. We're going to have a good time. Let's kick it off with some music.
We have a wonderful group of people who have volunteered their time to help with music today. So, Aaron and Bernie Lois, here's Brandon Weber and Jesse Woolman. And we're going to start with one of Dad's favorites, the Wabash Cannonball. One, two, three, four. From the great Atlantic Ocean to the wide Pacific shore, the green old flowing mountains to the south down by the moor.
She's mighty tall and handsome, she's known quite well by all. Regular combination on the Wabash Cannonball.
Oh, listen to the jingle, the rumble, and the roar, as she glides along the woodland or the hills and by the shore. Hear the mighty rush of the engine, hear the lonesome hobo's call, as you travel across the country on the Wabash Cannonball. Oh, the eastern states are dandy, so the people always say. From New York to St. Louis and Chicago, by the way, to the hills of Minnesota, where the rippling waters fall. No changes can be taken on the Wabash Cannonball. Oh, listen to the jingle, the rumble, and the roar, as she glides along the woodland or the hills and by the shore. Hear the mighty rush of the engine, hear the lonesome hobo's call, as you travel across the country on the Wabash Cannonball.
She went down from Birmingham one cold December day. When she pulled into that station, you could hear them people say, "There's a fellow from Tennessee, boys, he's long and he is tall. He came down from Alabama on the Wabash Cannonball."
Oh, listen to the jingle, the rumble and the roar, as she glides along the woodland or the hills and by the shore. Hear the mighty rush of the engine, hear the lonesome hobo's call, as you travel across the country on the Wabash Cannonball.
And we'll be getting started here right away.
Musician friends, after a loved one dies, family members can be overtaken by a powerful archaeological impulse, a drive to understand their loved ones on a deeper level. Dad always said there was a blue metal trunk up in the attic that had things from his earliest days in it. God knows why we didn't eagerly rush up and carry it downstairs and crank it open, but we put it off, figuring there'd always be time, till there wasn't. Sadly, we never did delve into the often spoken of blue trunk of Dad's past while he was still alive and able to elaborate on its contents. But in the weeks after Bill died, we finally went up to the attic. We got the trunk downstairs onto the dining room table and went to open it, only to find that the main latch was securely locked and not a key in sight. After a trip to the locksmith, Mom, Joey, and I, at long last, ceremoniously opened the lid. What treasures did we find inside? Amazing old photos we had never seen before. Yearbooks with messages scrawled by teenage hands in 1953, bold front pages of the World Herald newspaper from pivotal moments of 20th century history, ancient report cards, and most importantly, 3 different scrapbooks, lovingly assembled by my grandma Vernita, books filled with haunting photos of my dad from the 1930s and 40s, mementos and inscriptions clearly meant to turn an unsettled, itinerant life into a grand adventure, to reassure a child of an absent father's love, to memorialize a once-in-a-lifetime Boy Scout trip to Washington, D.C. Heartbreakingly, the contents of the trunk had gotten wet at some point, so many of the objects in it had extensive water damage and mold. Some of the precious photographs were glued together with their melted emulsion, and the whole lot of it smelled musty and foul. But enough was intact to get an impression of the young Bill Anderson and the places and people that he came from.
Bill was born to Harvey and Vernita Anderson in 1936 during the Great Depression in Hudson, South Dakota, less than 2 years after the birth of his sister Darlie, and 5 years before the youngest, his brother Dick. When Bill was born, it was clear that something was amiss with his eyes. They weren't tracking properly. His parents soon learned that both of his retinas had been permanently scarred, one eye more than the other, as a result of a parasitic infection his mother had during the pregnancy. The formal diagnosis, congenital toxoplasmosis. He wore glasses from an early age. Bill used to tell a story about an after-school argument with a classmate on their way home. He put his glasses into the paper lunch bag he was carrying home and put the bag on a tree branch for safety in case they came to blows, only to watch in dismay as his adversary grabbed the sack, flung it to the ground, jumped up and down on it. Bill told it like it was a humorous tale in his adulthood, but it couldn't have been funny at the time.
The family moved around a lot in Bill's childhood due to his father's restless search for better jobs. When World War II was in full swing and defense labor was needed, Harvey packed up the family in a small house trailer and headed west. The quest took them across the country, all the way to the Pacific Ocean, with jobs in Denver, Oakland, and Kennewick, Washington. Harvey worked long hours, and Vernita cared for the 3 children in the cramped trailer in camps crowded with other itinerant defense workers. On March 24th, 1945, his 9th birthday, a homesick Bill wrote a letter to his grandparents in Hudson. Dear Grandma and Grandpa, how are you? I am fine. I got your letter today. I never knew you could write so good. Is Grandma okay? The birthday card is cute. Thanks a lot for the $1. I would like to come back. How is the farm getting along? Mother and Dickie and Darlie have gone to town to get me a present. Daddy is sleeping. Grandma Raker gave me $1 too. Miss Dalgy sent me a letter. It is a nice day out here now. Well, that is all for now. Loving kisses, with love, from Billy. There was a long row of X's and O's across the bottom of the letter.
The itinerant life and the cramped living space got old pretty fast. Harvey took a job in Cuba that was to be followed by another in Florida. Vernita and the kids would return to live with Bill's grandparents, Harvey's folks, on a farm outside Hudson until they could join Harvey when he got to Florida. But fate intervened. Harvey would become involved with his secretary in Cuba and ask Vernita for a divorce. After that, Bill saw his dad on the rare occasions when Harvey came to visit. He sometimes brought presents for the kids, but his absence was their everyday reality.
The farm where the senior Andersons lived was about a mile outside of Hudson. The Big Sioux River was a property boundary. The farmhouse didn't have running water or electricity. What it did have was Grandpa Hjalmar and Grandma Mary. Hjalmar, a first-generation Norwegian immigrant, became their father figure, teaching them to make willow whistles from trees down by the river, making them kites, teaching them to use a bow and arrow to shoot and fish.
By all accounts, he was a brilliant man, an inventor, farmer, writer, sharpshooter, and trapper. He founded and laid the cornerstone for the Hudson Lutheran Church, where Bill was confirmed at age 13. To his grandchildren, he meant attention, love, and adventure.
He told them tales of his own childhood on that farm, playing with the Sioux Indian children down by their camps near the river. After a big snow, he'd hitch the horse to a sleigh, wrap the kids in sheepskin and horse blankets, and whisk them across the drifted fields. Grandma Mary, also a Norwegian immigrant, was lively, outgoing, played guitar, and kept everyone fed with traditional dishes from the old country, like lefse, kroomkake, and sweet soup. Dad loved to tell us stories about his life on the rustic farm. He was partial to scatological and gross-out stories, and he always told them with an impish gleam in his eye. We had a white dog named Brownie. Why do you think he was named Brownie? Why, Dad? Because every time there was a thunderstorm, he'd run into the outhouse and dive down the hole. In another story, he told how the water they brought from the well to the farmhouse for cooking, bathing, brushing teeth, and cooking with was taking on a progressively foul odor. The reason was discovered. A cat had died and was putrefying in the well. He told us about huddling together for warmth with his siblings beneath the feather tick in the cold upstairs bedroom of the farmhouse on frigid winter nights. In the morning, the contents of their chamber pot were frozen by the bedside. Of all Dad's childhood stories, though, my favorite was about fishing with some of his young friends on the banks of the Big Sioux River one summer evening. They decided to camp out overnight. So Dad tied the end of his fishing line onto his big toe so that if he caught a fish as he slept, it would tug on his toe and wake him up. Well, in the middle of the night, a violent yank on the line shocked him awake, and he knew he had caught something big. He excitedly pulled on the line and hauled the fish on shore. It was a monstrous garfish with a long alligator-like snout lined with needle-sharp teeth, and it was tied to his toe. As he ran to escape it, he pulled it along after him as he danced and hopped to avoid its gnashing teeth. Eventually, after much peril, Dad was able to turn it loose and get the fish back into the water and get back to sleep. But now comes the magical part of the story. At dawn, he felt a gentle lapping at the side of his face. When he opened his eyes, a beautiful doe was licking the salt from his cheek.
After the family moved from the farm to a house of their own in Hudson, Vernita worked at various jobs, including the drugstore, the school lunch program, and managing a cafe with a pool hall in the rear where Bill worked and honed his pool shooting skills. One of the scrapbooks in the blue trunk told a special story. Bill was a Boy Scout, and in 1950, a thrilling opportunity arose. The National Boy Scout Jamboree was coming up in July, offering scouts a trip to Washington, D.C. and Valley Forge, where an anticipated 50,000 scouts from coast to coast would gather in a giant campout.
But reality set in. Bill's mom couldn't afford the cost. So Bill watched while his fellow scouts eagerly prepared.
Then came the annual community raffle drawing downtown with a monetary prize of exactly the amount needed for the jamboree. Miraculously, the winning ticket had Vernita's name on it. Bill started packing.
The scouts headed off by train for Washington, D.C. Bill said the passenger cars had open windows and the dust and smoke from the engine drifted back to coat them with a layer of grime. Then disaster struck. A black widow spider came out of nowhere and bit him on the leg. The bite swelled and festered. Bill knew he was in trouble. A kindly porter got a look at the swollen, angry wound and took quick action. He used his pocket knife to lance the bite, sucked out the venom, and spat it away. Bill was saved.
Soon the scouts arrived in Washington, D.C. After some preliminary sightseeing and history lessons, they were off to Valley Forge.
Bill wrote letters and cards to his mother and grandparents, reporting his impressions and adventures.
I went to Philadelphia yesterday. I got to touch the Liberty Bell.
Night before last, I saw President Truman. There was 130,000 people to hear him speak. He sure has white hair.
We get to see television here. It's just like a movie.
We have places where we can get pop and candy, but our water is terrible.
I've met kids from Utah, Texas, Minnesota, California, New York, and many other states.
The scouts loved swapping souvenirs with other troops. A troop leader from Hudson sent jamboree reports back home to the local paper. This one made it into print. Billy Anderson is quite a trader. He tore a piece of bark off a tree and told some boy it was from the only redwood tree in South Dakota. Got a handful of stuff for it. Among the stuff was a little horned toad from a Texas scout. It somehow managed to survive the trip home to Hudson, and Bill displayed it in the window of the drugstore where he worked as a soda jerk. He even made a little leash for it.
Bill was always Billy in Hudson, right down to the identification in his high school yearbook. He sang in Glee Club, wrote a humor column for the school paper, and performed in the class plays.
In college, he majored in journalism, worked at various part-time jobs. One summer break back in Hudson, he and a friend ran a fireworks stand. He liked telling of the pit that they dug behind the counter and covered by a floorboard where they hid illegal fireworks to thwart inspectors and sell only to their most trusted customers. Bill had a lot of fun in college, maybe a little too much by his own account.
Finally, the diploma was in his hand and college days were over. He joined the staff of the Lincoln Star in Lincoln, Nebraska, taking home $32 a week after taxes and residing in lavish quarters at the YMCA. One day in the summer of 1959, I went swimming with a college friend who was an intern at the Lincoln Star newspaper.
Let's go to Capitol Beach.
She said,
The single night shift guys at the Star hang out there in the daytime.
That's where I first met Bill. Looking up at me out of the water, standing on the edge of the pool, the attraction was immediate.
Good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up with me? Well, hey, sweet baby, don't you think maybe we could find us a brand new recipe? I got a hot right foot and a $2 bill. I know a spot right over the hill. Soda pop and the dancing's free. So if you wanna have fun, come along with me. Said, hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up with me?
For a few magical weeks, we spent all our free time together. I hadn't really felt comfortable and at ease with very many guys, but with Bill, it was effortless. I remember clearly, one late afternoon at Capitol Beach again, we were lying close together on the sand on our towels by the pool, quiet, drowsy, content, my head on his shoulder. The sun was getting lower, and funny how the things you remember. I remember watching the angle of light on his suntanned arms, the sand caught in the hairs, and it just turned him to gold. In that moment, I remember feeling deeply happy. But soon it all ended, as quickly as it had begun. Of course, my heart was broken. I moped around the apartment, listening to sad music.
Well, why don't you love me like you used to do? How come you treat me like a worn-out shoe? My hair's still curly and my eyes still blue. Why don't you love me like you used to do? Ain't had no loving like a hugging and a kissing in a long, long while. We don't get nearer or further or closer than a country mile. Why don't you spark me like you used to do? And say sweet nothings like you used to coo? The same old trouble you've always been through. Why don't you love me like you used to do?
I was just 19 when that short summer romance occurred, but it was a hard loss, and I grieved it for a long time. Years later, he made a heartfelt apology, saying he just hadn't been ready for a commitment and he didn't know how to tell me. Meanwhile, life went on. In 1961, I took a teaching job in Bellevue High School, and in 1962, Bill got a job on the night copy desk at the Omaha World Herald. And one night, quite out of the blue, he called me. We were back on. Bill didn't drive. Bill didn't drive. His vision wasn't good enough, so it was up to me. He had Mondays off, so Monday after school, I'd drive my blue and white 1955 Chevy Bel Air two-door hardtop to Omaha, where we often spent the evening playing Scrabble and playing more Scrabble at his apartment. We always stayed up too late, and I nearly fell asleep at the wheel driving back to Bellevue to teach on Tuesday morning. We made a plan to marry in the summer of 1963, but we just couldn't stand to wait that long. So we pushed it up to February 2nd to be exact, but we always referred to it as Feb 2. It didn't occur to us at the time that we'd picked a February holiday and would have 60 Groundhog Days of romance stretching into our future. During our engagement, when I would return to my hometown of Albion during school holiday breaks, I'd write dreamy love letters to Bill back in Omaha. Bill didn't do a very good job of writing back, but one day in the weeks after his death, in the bottom drawer of his dresser, I found my old letters. They'd been through 4 residential moves. There they were, in a box along with the letter he wrote to his grandma from the Boy Scout Jamboree, other ancient documents, including a receipt dated February 1st, 1963, for a $3 marriage license. Before the first anniversary rolled around, we were a family of 3. Joey was born in December 1963. Jill?
Here's Dad with Joey. Mom's scrawl on the back of this photo says it all. Bill thinks he'll sneak this shot into the paper. Headlined, World's Cutest Baby Born to Omaha Couple.
Then came little Jill in 1966.
The family was complete. Oh, here you go. A typical picture of our family in the early 70s. Joe being squirrely, Mom and Dad smoking cigarettes, and me staring gape-mouthed at nothing and about to scratch my butt. And then for those who prefer color, every shade of polyester known to man. What was Dad like as a father? I have a memory so deep in the core of me and clear in my mind and body that thinking about it instantly calms me. When I was a little girl, my parents would take us kids along to their friends' houses for socializing and supper. My brother and I would play with the kids of their friends. Eventually, at the end of the evening, when we were thoroughly exhausted, we would head for home in the 1964 Dodge Dart. In my memory, Dad would sit in the back seat and cradle me in his arms all the way home, and I would fall asleep. When we arrived in our driveway, I was usually awake, but with my eyes closed, dreading that the sensation of being held by my father might soon end. So I would pretend that I was sound asleep. As he climbed the steps up to the front door of our house with me in his arms, I wouldn't squirm or stir a bit for fear that he might set me down. He would carry me straight to my bed and tuck me in, and I would fake sleep the whole way. Dad loved to sing, and he had favorite songs he'd sing to us kids. He had a beautiful voice. I'll never forget the feeling I had when he'd sit on the edge of my bed and stroke my hair back and sing to me. Here are some of the songs that he used to sing. The pale moon was rising above the green mountain. The sun was declining beneath the blue sea when I strayed with my love to the pure crystal fountain that stands in a beautiful vale of Tralee. She was lovely and fair as the rose of the summer, yet it was not her beauty alone that won me. Oh no, it was the love in her eyes ever dawning that made me love Mary, the Rose of Tralee.
Colors are flying, today's the big show. Announcers are busy, it's the big rodeo. Cowboys chase doggies to the end of the dune. Hey, I'm after 'em singing this tune. Hold on, little doggies, hold on. When the lariat tightens, you're gone, you're gone. Make your feet fly, they'll be tied by and by. Hold on, little doggies, hold on.
On a ranch in Montana, I'll build a big fire. I'll rope 'em and brand 'em, and away you'd admire. See a stray doggy going over the dune. Hey, I'm after 'em singing this tune.
Hold on, little doggies, hold on. When the lariat tightens, you're gone, you're gone. Make your feet fly, they'll be tied by and by. Hold on, little doggies, hold on. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming for to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me.
Coming for to carry me home. We
climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder, soldiers of the cross.
Every rung goes higher, higher. Every rung goes higher, higher. Every rung goes higher, higher. Soldiers of the cross. Children, do you love my Jesus? Children, do you love my Jesus? Children, do you love my Jesus? Soldiers of the cross. If you love him, why not serve him? If you love him, why not serve him? If you love him, why not serve him? Soldiers of the cross, swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home.
Bill was an avid photographer. He loved to photograph the family. Here are some of our favorite shots. He was a fanatic for cameras, fancy lenses, tripods, and camera bags, and he always had to have the latest gadgets. Wherever we lived, he would set up a darkroom in the earlier days and print his own photos.
Now, most photographers wouldn't want kids anywhere near their darkroom. But our dad, knowing how magical and mysterious it would all seem to us, invited us in with patience and generosity. It was a big deal to Joey and me when it came time to make prints. Dad let us help, and it thrilled us. Watching him use the enlarger to project the image from the negative onto the photo paper, setting his big darkroom timer with the glow-in-the-dark numbers, moving the photo paper with tongs into different chemical baths, and watching the images slowly emerge, rinsing them in cool, clean water, and laying them on the curved surface of a heated press to cook them dry. The whole process was a kid's dream come true, and he let us be involved every time.
Bill had a great sense of humor. He was a natural clown, and he wasn't afraid to be downright silly and playful.
He loved to make up wild stories to amuse us kids and get us to add on details of our own to embroider the tale. His humor was off the wall. One day on the deck, out of the blue, he broke into his own version of the song Desperado. Nosferatu, why don't you come to your senses? You've been out biting fences for so long now. And then another time, after watching a nature show about mammals on TV, he improvised, "My mammal done told me when I was in knee pants." Dad loved to invent songs and stories, and he encouraged us to do the same. For Father's Day and birthday, he wanted me to write him original poetry instead of buying him gifts.
Even in his many medical ordeals, he kept the humor coming, and he liked to make his nurses and therapists laugh. In his later years, when he had lost much of his physical vigor, he ran across the swimming suit photo from the prime of his life way back at Capitol Beach. Now, some men might lament the loss of their virile youth. Not Bill. He had pocket-sized photos made, excuse me, wallet-sized copies made to hand out to his friends and family, and we came to call it his beefcake photo.
When Joe and I were kids, Dad loved to take us on tours of the World Herald newspaper. This was in the heyday of the paper in the 1960s and 70s, before the internet. It was a bustling, high-pressure environment, cranking out multiple day and night editions and a fat, impressive Sunday paper. I remember liking the sleek mid-century Art Deco style of the building's main entrance, but we mostly entered through the rougher employees' entrance with its industrial-feeling metal door and lingering smell of cigarettes. I remember we'd walk down a long hallway hung with framed famous front pages, 15 of which my father had designed and written dramatic headlines for. History-making events such as the Kennedy assassination, Nixon's resignation, and the moon landing. My brother Joe was fascinated by machines, and he loved watching the vacuum-powered pneumatic system where canisters filled with edited stories would shoot through a network of overhead tubes straight to the production area. Dad would take us downstairs to a large room filled with colossal rolls of virgin newsprint that seemed to us like monoliths reaching up to the ceiling. Then up to the newsroom, where the copy editors sat with their cigarettes, ashtrays, and cups of coffee, slashing away mercilessly at the reporters' masterpieces with their thick copy pencils. Dad seemed proud to share us with his friends on the copy desk, and we were, of course, wide-eyed to experience it all.
Bill started at the World Herald in 1962, working nights as a copy editor. He was made chief of the night copy desk, and by 1966, the night news editor. He later worked days and served as Sunday news editor at one time. He never came home from work without 2 or 3 copy pencils in his pants pockets. People who worked with him, though, can tell the story much better than I can. Excuse me. Don Summerside met Bill at the Star in Lincoln and came to the World Herald shortly after Bill did. Here's Don to tell us about it.
My train of thought sometimes leaves the station without me, so I'm going to lean on my ragged notes here. My stories of Bill began on an election night in 1960. Some college buddies and I went to a fraternity brother's apartment, which was atop the old Lincoln Hotel, to watch the Kennedy and Nixon returns come in. In addition to being a student, my fraternity brother, whose name was Bob McCoy, was also a part-time sports staffer at the Lincoln Star newspaper, which was right across the street from the hotel. McCoy was one of a long line of young journalists who lived in what was called the hotel's penthouse on the top of the hotel. The previous residents included such people as Charlie Thone, future governor, Harold Anderson, World Herald publisher, and many others. Anyway, later on that election night, Bob's roommate arrived at the penthouse after his work at the Star, and he quickly enlivened the evening with dozens of facts, opinions, and arguments about the election. That was my introduction to William Harvey Anderson. He was a future co-worker and, of course, a longtime friend. Now it's more than 60 years later, and we're in the midst of another election, and I'm really missing those lively political chats with Bill. I'm missing much more, of course, from the friendship that began in 1964 when I moved to Omaha and joined the World Herald. And Barb and Bill welcomed us to the city and to the newspaper and became also lifetime friends. That friendship grew a couple of years later when the four of us crammed into my little Mustang for a trip to the Tetons in Yellowstone. And that trip was also the beginning of a half century of dinners with Bill and Barb, followed by our bridge games. If there was an Amazon Customer Hall of Fame, Bill would surely be in it. Every visit of ours to the Anderson house for dinner saw Bill displaying his newest gadgets and an ever larger TV screen that grew every time we got there. Then it was into the kitchen for his Instapots and other things that he insisted Brenda had to have for her games. If there was a copy editor's Hall of Fame in the newspaper business, Bill would be in that too. As his headline you saw on the moon landing and others in the World Herald's famous front pages illustrate, Bill had a perfect knack for the right word or the provocative word or an attention-getting phrase. And he had that same knack and talent for page designs too. I remember that on the night of the 1975 Omaha tornado, we had what was a good picture of the devastation in the Westgate neighborhood. Bill came over and gave it a magnificent crop that stretched the picture from left to right all across the front page. And what was a good picture became a great picture and another famous front page. But most of all, I think, if I had a Hall of Fame for my most unforgettable friends, Bill would certainly be at the head of that line. But as the song said, it was time to fly away for Bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. In 1978, when Bill was the day copy desk chief, a previously unheard of event occurred at the paper. They hired a woman for the copy desk. We are fortunate to have that very woman right here with us today, and she's going to tell the story herself. Here is Nancy Salem, all the way from Albuquerque.
Thank you, everybody. Yes, my claim to fame is that I was the first woman on the day copy desk at the Omaha World Herald. And that was... And that was only thanks to Bill Anderson. And this story will just sort of tell you a little bit about what Bill did for one person, me. So I went to Omaha in 1978 with my fiance, and he had gotten a job as the bureau chief for the Associated Press there in Omaha. And the only way I would go with him was if I could get a job at the World Herald. So Kent, my fiance, talked to different people at the World Herald, and I had been a very, very novice reporter. I had never done any copy editing, but I was a reporter, but green. And the managing editor, Jack Hawley, said, yeah, we'll get her a job as a reporter, but there isn't one open right now, so we want her just to sit on the copy desk and, for a month or so, and then we'll move her into a reporting job. Well, the day copy desk at the World Herald was legendary. I mean, crusty is not even begin to describe it. These guys were hardcore, old-time copy editors, and Bill was sort of the head guy there. He was the best. But they were all really good. I mean, they were professional copy editors. They were excellent writers, excellent headline writers, excellent designers. They were the best of the best. And no woman had ever worked on this copy desk. So I'll never forget my first day there. I went and sat down, and I was sitting across from this guy named George Shestak. And any of those of you old-timers who remember George, he was hardcore, and they all were. They were all just great, and they hated the fact that they had taken this woman, and not even a woman, a girl. I was probably 24, 25 years old, and put her on the copy desk. It was almost an insult that you would think of it as sort of a holding spot, because they were so professional. And it was horrible for me those first few days, because it was, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about what they did or how to do that job or how I was going to survive. Anyway, Bill literally saved my life. I mean, he was the guy everybody looked up to, and I mean, he was just so great. And he took me under his wing. I mean, he taught me just in a very short time everything he could teach me. He taught me about copy editing. He taught me about page design. He would take me down into the basement of the World Herald where they would cut and paste the pages together, and with this great guy named Mike D'Augusta. Remember Mike? And, you know, we'd look over his shoulder, and Bill had a really distinctive style of copy editing. Any of you here who worked with him, you know, he would get real close to the screen with his one good eye, you know, and he'd be over my shoulder up close to the screen and showing me how to do this, showing me how to do that. You know, he just taught me all the ins and outs, how to write a good headline. And in the process, all the other guys on the copy desk started accepting me. I mean, this story could have ended so much differently. You know, I would have spent a month or two on the copy desk. It would have been uncomfortable the entire time. They would have gotten me my reporting job, and that would have been the end of that. But Bill kind of made them all like me and accept me, and he taught me how to do the work, and, you know, it was just this kind of a process. And then a big part of that process was that every day, this was the day desk, so we'd come in at 6, we'd get off at 2, and at 2 o'clock, all the guys would go to the neighbor's bar. So everybody would pile into their cars, go to the bar, and a lot of debauchery occurred at the neighbors. A lot of heavy drinking, a lot of smoking, a lot of overeating. I mean, for Bill to bring me, I mean, it was one thing to bring me into the copy desk, but to bring me to the neighbors was this whole other level of getting me accepted by the copy desk guys. And he did. I mean, again, it was his generosity, the stature that he had on the copy desk. I became one of the guys. You know, I could never keep up with them in terms of alcohol consumption, but and it always amazed me that, you know, we'd all go to the neighbors when we'd put the paper to bed, and all this, you know, heavy partying, pool, the whole thing, and they'd pile into cars, go home, and come back the next day and do it all over. Bill also, in addition to bringing me, you know, it's hard to imagine how hard it would be to get them to accept someone like me, but they did. And that was thanks to Bill. And then he also brought me into his family. I mean, that was just the most amazing thing to be part. I met Barb and became friends with Barb, you know, Joe and Jill. You know, it was just this huge embrace of work and family and the whole thing. So a month or two after I started, Jack Hawley, the managing editor, came to me and he said, we have a reporting job for you now. You know, you can leave the copy desk. And I didn't want to. You know, I really didn't want to. I had a family there. I had to, you know, I was really, you know, I wanted to stay on the copy desk. But I had to get past Larry Novicki right here. Larry was the news editor, the day news editor. And it wasn't my decision to hire me onto the copy desk. Larry had to hire me. So a day came where Larry had me, you probably don't even remember this, he gave me a huge story to work on. It was, what did you say earlier? It was something like the Iran-Contra or something, or the hostage crisis. Huge story. So if you're a copy editor on a newspaper like the World Herald, you're working with a whole bunch of different wire services. And so you might have 20 stories on Iran, on the hostage situation. And you've got to compile them all into one. You've got to write a headline. You've got to do all these different little things really quickly and on deadline. And this is stuff like, a month earlier, I couldn't have even dreamed of doing. So Larry was testing me, essentially, to whether I could work on the copy desk. And I'll never forget, all the guys were straight. The air, it was thick. It was so much, there was so much tension in the air. And Bill was looking at me like you'd look at one of your kids, like, oh, you know, she's got to pass this test. And even the guys, George and Jeff, and you know, it was Ray. I mean, it was all of them. Liz, were all looking at me, and it was stressful because Larry's imposing. I mean, Larry was like, you know, and he was looking over my shoulder, and I had to do this big test. And anyway, I passed it, and I became an official. Because up to that, I was really just sitting there. I became official member of the the World Herald copy desk. And I do have Bill to thank that, and all the guys that I worked with. Bill was funny, as we've said. He was generous. He was kind. But he also had this really poignant and vulnerable side to him. And one story I'll tell is he really hated not being able to drive. He really wanted to be able to drive. And so at some point, while I was there, he convinced Barb to let him get a little scooter, remember the scooter? He had this little scooter that he would ride to and from work, into the neighbor's bar and home. And, none of us thought it was a good idea, including Barb. I mean, none of us thought it was a good idea. And we all, there was people on the copy desk. I mean, Bill was the best of the best, but there was also a lot of affection for him. You know, people really, really loved Bill, and we all worried about him with this scooter. And so we all kind of, you know, it's like you follow him to the bar, you follow him home, you know, just to make sure he was going to be okay. And one afternoon after we'd been at the neighbors, it was my job to follow Bill home. And so he was riding the scooter, and I was behind him, and it was like this, you know, it was like out of a dream. I just had a feeling something was going to happen, you know, that something not good was going to happen that day. And I was right behind him, and I was watching him, and we came up to an intersection. I can see it was like it was yesterday. And sure enough, he got up to the intersection and just fell over. You know, the scooter just fell over, and I leaped out of the car and ran over, and he was okay, but that was it. That was the end of the scooter experiment, and Bill was so heartbroken. And you know what? We were all heartbroken for Bill, but we were all relieved as well, because we didn't have to worry anymore. When it came time to leave Omaha, I went back to Albuquerque. Kent had gotten another job back there, and we left. It was probably the hardest night of my life. The guys gave me a neighbor's jacket, which I still have. It was just the end of an amazing time for me. I took back to Albuquerque everything I had learned from Bill and the guys. I went on to a great career in copy editing. You know, I mean, it really changed my life. I worked in copy editing at the local newspaper for a long time. And then I actually eventually became a publisher of a newspaper, and now I work in corporate communications. But all of that, I mean, you talk about the people in your life who really change your life for the better and really kind of influence your path. And for me, that was Bill Anderson. It really was. And I'll always be indebted to him and always love him dearly and miss him very, very much.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy.
What a great story. Bill's favorite extracurricular activity was performing as a soloist at the annual Press Club Ball. In December each year, the Press Club staged a big music and dance show about the past year's state and local news, roasting politicians and public officials.
In 1975, downtown business interests had a shining vision of riverfront development. The mayor was opposed. Here's Bill satirizing the controversy in his big solo, The Holy City. Uh-oh, uh-oh, uh-oh. Whoa, back, going back, go back. There it is.
There it is.
Nope.
We do have a video.
Technical difficulties. Thank you for your patience. Slight technical difficulty.
Talk among yourselves for a moment.
Now, with his own vision of the glories of the riverfront, is another of our favorite Omahans, Mr. Average Omahan, number 2.
$1975, folks. Long time ago.
Last night I lay a-sleeping, there came a dream so fair. I stood along the riverfront, beneath the fountain there. I heard Mayor Strobing bitching, and ever as she bitched, methought the downtown businessmen responded with this pitch. Methought the downtown businessmen responded with this pitch. Oh, riverfront, soon thou shalt come to pass. Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna for Pendergrass.
At its height, the audience filled the old Peony Park ballroom, and it was a hot ticket in town. Songs and skits lampooned the bigwigs, most of whom were sitting in choice seats right up front.
And then I woke, the scene had changed, the streets were drab and grim. Hushed were the glad hosannas, hushed the con man's hymn. The garbage dumps were reeking still, the rats ran to and fro. As the shadow of the fountain rose across the muddy moor, as laughter at the fountain rose across the muddy moor. Oh, riverfront, soon thou shalt come to pass. Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna to Pendergrass.
Everybody got all dressed up for it. I'll never forget Mom's leopard print jumpsuit and the powder blue eyeshadow.
Then once again the scene returned, hallucination dawned. I saw the holy city that Leo daily spawned. The drunks and bums were off the streets, and everything was nice. The riverfront was finished. Don't ask about the price. It was a place like Camelot. I heard Jean Leahy say it was the New Jerusalem that would not pass away.
Anderson. Give him a big one. I think we ought to have a little encore, don't you? Do it, Billy.
Quite a night. Quite a night. In the early 90s, the World Herald Brass decided to modernize the paper's look and design. Rather than ask the existing staff for their ideas, they chose to bring in some outside experts to tell them what to do. Understandably, this went over like a lead balloon with the regular staff. We have video to share now from one of those unwelcome outside experts. Here's Bill's good friend, Eric Seidman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Seidman. Over 30 years ago, I started a new job at the Omaha World Herald. Coming from New York, I realized very quickly I was a change agent in a place that didn't want change. This was going to be very difficult. On my first day, living just a few blocks away, I thought I could walk to work. I knew it was cold out, 20 below, with a slight wind trying to blow me back to New York. I threw on my jacket, left my building, and walked 50 feet before I thought my face would fall off. That kind of cold extended in the newsroom until I met Bill. He was somebody who sensed my impatience, trying to make this paper more visually compelling. By the way, that's what I do. I make newspapers easier to read and more inviting. Bill got that right away. He explained the fear many have doing things another way, to change. Bill understood my frustration and began explaining to me how to convince people to accept doing things differently. More importantly, he suggested how I might make change in my own life, stop being a complete nutcase, and maybe, just maybe, become a happy person. He invited me to his home. He introduced me to his lovely wife, Barb, and his wonderful daughter, Jill. He showed me the wonders of making bread in a crock pot and experimenting with recipes Julia Child never thought possible. Even though I disappointed him being a sports moron and swearing never to do anything to make me sweat, Bill convinced me to go to the gym 3 times a week anyway. While I made muscles, he made conversation in the jacuzzi. And so I was the one who changed. I'm not sure the newspaper did it all. But through Bill, for the first time, I saw life as more than work. I asked the love of my life, Jane, to leave New York, marry me, and had Bill and Barb witness our wedding. Over the years, the 4 of us managed a few trips to Santa Fe, catching up and enjoying the food. I'm now convinced Bill's food was not food at all, but really a potion lovingly prepared just for me. It cast a spell like the memory of him that will never wear off. Thank you, my friend. Be in eternal bliss.
Isn't complete without acknowledging a health crisis that cast a shadow over our lives. Excuse me. In the mid-1960s, Bill was a talented, creative young editor with apparently unlimited potential at the paper. In late 1968, he suffered a mental health episode that brought chaos to the family and might have ended his career. He had become increasingly intense about things and seemed to need less and less sleep. Then we got word that his beloved Grandma Mary had passed away in Hudson. After her funeral, Bill lost touch with reality. He was hospitalized for several weeks, misdiagnosed, endured traumatic shock treatments, and came home with a regime of heavy tranquilizer drugs. These drugs had a deadening effect on him, but he returned to work and continued to be an effective editor in spite of it. 1 year later, there was a repeat episode. Doctors were baffled. More shock treatments, more drugs. Again, he fought his way back to work. When such episodes occurred, I would take Joe and Jill to stay with relatives in Albion or South Dakota. that was a haven, a godsend for us to have that support for the kids. The mystery of his illness was not solved until 1978. Turned out he had a form of bipolar or manic depressive disorder. He needed lithium, not major tranquilizers. The frequency and severity of episodes was drastically reduced. But I need to say, throughout those early episodes, the World Herald had our back. They kept his paychecks coming during his absences, and they welcomed him back when he got back to stability. I'll be eternally grateful to the paper for that support and that compassion. They were hard years for all of us. I'm grateful for our family's support and the paper's commitment to Bill, and I salute Bill. He never gave up.
In the 1990s, the paper introduced new technology to its editing process. Copy editing went from pencil and paper to computer keyboards and screens. Bill's eyesight did not adapt well to this change, and in 1995, he retired on disability at age 59. Even in retirement, Dad stayed hooked on the news and identified as a newsman to the end of his life. He devoured the cable news shows on his big screen TV, and he always knew what went on in the world. In addition to his newshound activities, he relaxed on the beautiful deck that his son Joe built for him, played bridge and had meals and fun with good friends, ordered gadgets through Amazon, and took some notable trips to Hawaii, Texas, Alaska, Virginia, and New Mexico.
We bought a cabin where we enjoyed entertaining friends, swimming, fishing, kayaking. Bill loved the company of his dogs, 2 consecutive Boston Terriers, first Sally, then Stella. They really were the lights of his life. He used to like to stay overnight sometimes at the cabin with just Sally for his companion. They'd drift off to sleep to the bullfrogs croaking, the faint splash of fish jumping, and the moon painted a path across the lake.
Bill found his love for billiards as a kid running the pool hall behind his mother's cafe. In retirement, he returned to that interest by initiating regular Thursday afternoon pool games with a group of friends. Among them was Larry Novicki, an old friend from World Herald days. He's here to share some memories. No, you're good.
Well, I'll just stand over here.
Okay.
Actually, coming at this point in the program, a lot of my stuff has been preempted, so I'm going to try to edit as I go. You can see I have all these pages here. But I just wanted to point out, I mean, it's been kind of mentioned, but Bill was very proud of his ancestry. You folks from South Dakota probably know that more than anybody. This is like a Norwegian troll, he told me, not unlike what Jill and Barb had said, that he lived under a bridge in Hudson, South Dakota. And he always thought of himself as a troll, or later on he thought of himself as the Ayatollah and there's the Grand Mufti over here who talked earlier when we covered the Iran hostage crisis. But anyhow, I met Bill at the Lincoln Star when I worked there part-time, and he was on the the news desk. And the Star had a long time period between the first edition and the last edition. Several hours. You could take in a movie, you could go to dinner, shoot pool. We had one guy who would drive from Lincoln to Omaha to see his girlfriend and come back, in the time for the next edition. Anyhow, during that period, we would shoot snooker, and snooker balls are much smaller than the regular pool balls, as some of you might know. And Bill, despite his poor eyesight, was incredible at hitting those snooker balls, just with abandon. He cleaned the table. And on the table is also larger than a regular pool table. So for a while, I lived with Bill up in the penthouse that was mentioned earlier. And I think that's where I first met Barbara Wilson, who later became Mrs. Bill Anderson. And but then when I graduated, I left for grad school, and it was about a maybe 40-some year hiatus between the last time we shot pool with Bill and the next time. When I came back from the Army later on, I got a job at the World Herald, and Bill and Barb invited me to stay at their house while we were waiting for our place to be ready to move in. And I stayed in an upstairs bedroom, and I think Jill and Joe called me the stranger.
Did I really? How very rude of me. I'm sorry.
So, but at work, then I went to work, and Bill was my key mentor at the World Herald. As so many other people have said, he could latch on to somebody and gently help you along. I remember him counseling me when I went to the World Herald to wear a coat and tie to work. Ta-da! Because it was a lot more formal at the World Herald than it was at the Star, as Don Summerside remembers. And Bill had been sent off to school after I'd been there a little while, off to a seminar, and that was taught by Carl Riblett. Carl Riblett was the guy, he wrote a 700-page book on copy editing, later on the Golden Copy Editor. But Bill latched on to Carl Riblett's ideas, and he taught the rest of us a lot of it. Headlines should be short words, pithy. He always would say pithy headlines, 1 and 2 syllable words, and you follow those rules until you get better. When you really get good at headline writing, you know how to come out of the hole that you're in, surrounded by these rules, and you go over a fence, and then whatever you do is okay. Bill was one of those people who learned how to come out of the hole. And this is one of his headlines. He wrote many of them. There's some of them downstairs. You're going to want to go downstairs and see. It says, first footprints on an alien world mark a giant leap for mankind. Moon is a magnificent desolation. Well, it follows the rules for the most part. It's got 2-syllable, 1, 2-syllable words up until those last couple words. Magnificent desolation. Those are words of Buzz Aldrin and himself. So this was Bill's eye for headline poetry, I call it. Magnificent desolation. He had an eye for page design, as Don has said too. His page dummies were works of art, that the people downstairs could follow. They loved following his dummies more than anybody else. He had done, he was involved in many stories, as others have said, and you can see some of those downstairs too. And as also been said, the advent, even though it's kind of ironic, he was a gadget man, but it was a gadget that ended up having, he had to take early retirement because of his eyesight and the new computer system and stuff. So with that and he retired, and a little while later, that set the stage for our pool shooting. When I retired, somehow we got together, ended up at the Upstream downtown. They had a pool hall up there, and Bill and I and Ray, Bill's brother-in-law Ray Kawaguchi. There was some people you wouldn't know, Bob Patios, who died here recently, John Versani, who was another one who died recently. Joe Wheeler. Those were our pool players. We got a team together, and we actually won the division championship in Omaha. We could have gone to Las Vegas and shot pool in a tournament, but nobody had enough money, I think, to make the trip. We decided not to do that. But after the Upstream, we left the Upstream and went to pool hall out on 72nd and Center called the Shark Club, where we could play for free, which was a benefit. Then somebody else bought that, and they tore it down, and then we ended up at Shooters in Bellevue until COVID came around. There are some other pool shooters here. There's Kent Savory, and let's see who else. Well, I think James is here. James shot pool with us, and anyhow, let's see. Well, some of these others don't make any difference, but as Jill said, we played every Thursday all year round, and COVID ended it in 2020 here, and it hasn't resumed. Although I think maybe Bill might be shooting pool now with Bob Patios and John Bersani, maybe Willie Moscone in Minnesota Fats. Or writing headlines for Carl Keith. There was a guy that wasn't mentioned. And, or just tomorrow's his birthday. Maybe he's having a celebration with some Nightsiders in that Sorrento in the Sky. Happy birthday, old Crow.
Besides playing pool and watching the news, what were Dad's great loves? Well, besides his family and friends, he loved jelly beans and suckers, his big screen TV, Mishi's cheesecake, Mishi, loved your cheesecake, his little dogs, ordering gadgets from Amazon, and singing. In his piano bar days, Dad's favorite song to sing was Danny Boy. So we needed to include that today. And I'm going to give my rendition of Danny Boy for Dad. Helped out by Bernie Lois and Aaron Lois on violin. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. 'Tis you must go and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow. 'Tis I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, oh, Danny boy, I love you so.
And if you come and all the flowers are dying, if I am dead, as dead I well may be, you will come and find the place where I am lying, and kneel and say an Ave there for me, and I shall hear those soft you tread above me, and on my grave will warmer, sweeter be, if you will bend and tell me that you love me. Then I shall sleep in peace till you come back to me.
Thank you. That was nice. I'd like to say now that if any of you in the audience would like to stand and say anything, kindness, we'll bring a hand mic to you, and we would love to hear from you. But you can just raise your hand, and there's a guy.
One quick thing, I'm not even on the copy desk, so I don't know if I should be speaking or not, but Bill, there's a woman who worked for me in the business section named Joyce, and she had a sort of a sudden eye problem where she was having trouble seeing the screens, and so she took disability. This gave Bill an idea that he could take disability too, and that's what happened. That's how he got the idea.
Anyone else?
Any other stories or comments? Be sure to hold the mic close to your, very close to your mouth, or it doesn't pick it up very well.
Okay.
This is Nicole Joy.
Hello. I just want to say that I had the honor to be Bill's massage therapist for the last 6 months or so of his life, and it was an incredible honor. And hearing all of these stories, everything tracks. I knew him in the same ways that everybody is describing, but I also had really special moments of quiet with him. And massage therapists are supposed to make others feel better, but I often felt like Bill was the one making me feel better. So that's all I wanted to say. I'm going to miss him.
Thank you so much. Bill always seemed, oh, is there another?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Here we go.
Hello, my name's Houston, and I was welcomed into the Anderson family when I moved to town with Kevin and some other people. And I just wanted to speak just from that little point that Bill, I've learned so much today about Bill that I never knew. And, but you all welcomed me and us into your family, and I just want to say that everything that they've said about his sense of humor is what attracted me to Bill. I never left that house without laughing so hard when he was entertaining us, and I will miss him terribly for that alone, but all of you welcomed us. You became a second family for us, and he was always so generous and loving and welcoming, and so from that perspective, I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Houston. I got a text message. This is a text message from someone who could not be here but wanted to make a comment in this section of the program. This is from John Hargis, who owns a musical instrument store. He says, quite a few years ago, I was being treated for what I thought was pneumonia, but it wasn't pneumonia. And the next thing I know, I'm in the hospital, being told I needed bypass surgery. Being one of the many guys who avoids doctors' offices, and certainly hospitals, you can imagine this was quite terrifying for me. I went in on a Friday night, so I was lucky to have the weekend to wait and worry about what was to come. It also gave 2 days for word to spread about what was going on, so I had quite a few phone calls. As they are wheeling me down to surgery, I had already been given a little something to relax, and Mary hands me the phone saying it was Jill Anderson's father on the line. You see, Bill had recently had bypass surgery himself, and he reassured me. He said, "You will be fine. You will be very uncomfortable, but you will be fine." The last thing I remember before surgery is that conversation. Funny, when I woke up, Mary is standing there with a phone and hands it to me. It's Bill again. He wanted to make sure everything was okay. If I didn't know better, I might have believed I was talking with Bill the whole time. During my recovery week, I received several more calls from Bill, which I was so grateful for. He seemed to understand that I needed reassurance from someone who had had the same experience. Those phone calls never stopped, though. He would call a couple of times a year to check that everything was still okay. I don't know that Jill or her mom ever knew about those phone calls. So
That is so cool.
Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie Sirk. Uncle Bill was my mom's brother, and my sister and my brother and families are here. Uncle Bill had a special spot, and he always was joking, like you said, but his kids could not say my name. So I have been Googie all my life, and I called to check on him not that long ago, and he said, "Hey, Googie, how's it going?" I said, "Well, pretty good." But there again, I was one of the recipients of one of his many cameras, and he treated me to the zoo, and I had some pictures downstairs, and I think he got those bears to stand so I could get a good picture of them. But we'll miss you, Uncle Bill.
Thank you, Julie.
Musicians, let's come up. One more. Okay.
What I remember, my brother-in-law, Bill, as we all know, was so generous. And when my children and I would come from Albion to spend time in Omaha, it was incredible how much stuff he managed to send home with them. And then I got to find a place for when we got there, but they loved it.
Thanks, Kathy. Bill always seemed like a cat with 9 lives. He survived toxoplasmosis, falling off a windmill,
A vicious garfish attack, a black widow spider bite,
an aortic aneurysm, open heart surgery, bladder cancer,
a terrible fall, pneumonia, and then his luck ran out.
chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, had plagued him for some time in his later life. 55 years of smoking might have had something to do with it. And his damaged lungs were unable to meet the task of fighting RSV.
At the very end in the hospital, Joey, Mom, myself, and Brandon kept vigil with him through the night while the temperature outside dipped to 18 below zero. He left us around 6:55 a.m. on Mom's birthday, January 14th. It was terribly hard for us to let him go, of course, but at least for me, it was a small comfort that I got to sit by his bedside and sing to him after the palliative drugs had made him calm. I sang all the songs he used to sing me to sleep with, and any others I could think of besides. So now my amazing musician friends here and I would like to send Dad off with music. Please give a hand to the best kind of friends in the world, Bernie and Aaron Lois, Grace Manley, Jesse Woolman, and Brendan Weber. If you know this great old-timey song, you are welcome to join us on the chorus of it. Okay, here we go, folks. 1, 2, 3, 4. Some glad morning when this life is o'er, I'll fly away in the morning to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. When the shadows of this life have gone, I'll fly away in the morning like a bird from prison walls has flown. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away in the morning to a land where joy shall never end. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. One more time. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Y'all are invited to join us in the Commons downstairs. We would love to have you come down for some dessert and to see the display we made of some artifacts and photographs from Dad's life. But if you must leave and you are going out the back way, we have gift bags for each of the guests who came to spend time with us today. So don't leave without your gift bag. Brendan back there standing by the door will distribute them. They have a little puff of blue tissue paper out the top. So, hey, thank you all for being here. We love you, right, Mom? See you down in the Commons.